Tonight,
right to the top.
taking it to the top. The president imposes the highest sanctions in history on Iran. And in the wake of the Saudi oil attack, waving off talk of war.
The thing that does show strength would be showing a little bit of restraint.
This with a deadlock elsewhere in the region, the Israeli elections still too close to call.
Clean air! Clean air!
And global protests rage on as the debate over climate change heats up. Plus,
Facebook has a pattern now of censoring pro-life voices.
Congress is taking on bias and censorship in big tech. And the ghost stories among the shipwrecks of hundreds of sunken ships.
It was like you're looking up and going,
All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. The toughest sanctions America has ever imposed. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup. Well, tonight, President Trump describing those penalties as the highest level sanctions. They come in the wake of the attacks on 2 Saudi oil plants last weekend, believed to be backed by Tehran. CBN News national security correspondent Eric Phillips has tonight's top story.
President Trump says the sanctions, quote, go all the way to the top, including Iran's supreme leader. He says Iran could be a great nation, but they're bringing this on themselves with the choices they're making.
It's going to be at the highest level of sanctions.
During an Oval Office meeting with the Australian Prime Minister, President Trump made the announcement and then called in Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin to explain exactly what it means.
Both the Central Bank of Iran, as well as the National Development Fund, which is their sovereign wealth fund, will be cut off from our banking systems. This is very big. We've now cut off all sorts of funds to Iran.
It's an escalation of the maximum pressure campaign, following the bombing of 2 oil plants in Saudi Arabia nearly a week ago. Iran has not taken responsibility. Those Saudi military officials say the weaponry used in the bombing came from Iran.
These are the highest sanctions ever imposed on a country. We've never done it to this level. And it's too bad what's happening with Iran. It's going to hell.
The president says he and top administration officials will be considering military options against Iran as laid out by the Pentagon.
It's always possible.
But the president said ordering a military strike would be the easy way out, hearkening back to his response after Iran took down an unmanned U.S. drone in June over the Persian Gulf.
But I think the strong person's approach and the thing that does show strength would be showing a little bit of restraint. Much easier to do it the other way. It's much easier. And Iran knows if they misbehave, they're on borrowed time.
Iran's leaders have said that if the U.S. initiates military action against them for the strike in Saudi Arabia, which they said they had nothing to do with, it will, quote, spark an all-out war. President Trump says if that happens, the U.S. will win. In Washington, Eric Phillips, CBN News.
Thank you, Eric. Honesty, statehood, and seriousness. That's what Israel's Blue and White Party leader says is needed to form a unity government after this week's election deadlock there. With results nearly final, General Benny Gantz maintains a slight edge over Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party. But both men have failed to win enough votes to form a governing coalition in parliament. So now negotiations are set to begin to form a unity government. Should those fail, Israel could face an unprecedented third election this year. An estimated 10% of the budget of the Palestinian Authority goes to pay families of jailed and martyred terrorists. That's on the high end. North Carolina Congressman Ted Budd wants to make sure no American taxpayer dollars go towards those payouts. And Congressman Budd, who's just introduced the Iron Dome Reinforcement Act, joins us now from Capitol Hill. Congressman Budd, thank you so much for being with us.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Congressman, your bill sounds familiar to the Taylor Force Act signed into law last year by President Trump. How did the two differ?
That's a great act, the Taylor Force Act, that the president signed. This one's very similar, except it goes a step further. What that bill does and what my bill does is it requires the State Department to certify that no U.S. taxpayer dollars that we're using to support the Palestinian Authority are used to support terrorist activity. For instance, we know that 7 to 10%, as you mentioned earlier, of foreign aid that we send to the Palestinian Authority could be used to pay families of deceased terrorists. This and the Taylor Force Act requires that the State Department certify that that does not happen. What mine does is it redirects that dollars. If they're unable to certify, what this does, it takes those dollars and sends them to re-strengthen and reinforce the Iron Dome.
I know ultimately you're trying to bring accountability, but could your bill potentially create more instability in the Middle East if the Secretary can't determine if American taxpayer dollars wind up getting into the wrong hands? Does that make Israel less secure?
We don't think so. We think any money that's spent to strengthen the Iron Dome would make Israel more secure, and it encourages the Palestinians to make sure that none of that money that we're sending them right now, it's been anywhere between hundreds of millions to less than 100 million now, but that's still a lot of money when you look at 7 to 10%. We want to incentivize the Palestinian Authority not to use any of U.S. taxpayer dollars to support that.
Congressman Ted Budd of North Carolina, thank you so much for being with us.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Well, around the world today, hundreds of thousands of people participated in a global strike demanding drastic action on climate change. The protest comes just days before the UN Climate Action Summit convenes in New York on Monday. Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson has been monitoring the global campaign all day. Abigail, who organized these marches and where have they all been taking place?
Well, John, as you said, these protests are taking place all over the world on every continent, including Antarctica. And the estimates of protesters so far is about 3 million people, and that's before counting North and South America protests. Now, there's 800 marches planned in the U.S. alone, and all day long we've been monitoring footage coming in from countries like Pakistan, Australia, Slovakia, France, London, as well as video of marches from coast to coast in the U.S. The New York protest started this afternoon, and this is where the 16-year-old Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg, who's been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, will speak, and she's one of the main people who sparked this global movement today.
Look, my party has historically been a little bit allergic to talking about faith for what I actually consider to be a very good reason. And that is that we have seen the consequences of someone's faith being imposed on somebody else. And so we need to make sure that we honor the idea of standing for people of every religion and no religion equally. But I also think there's a moment here where we should invite those who are motivated by religious, moral considerations to know that those are some of the things that are at stake in what we're doing to this planet. What greater sin than to blame God for something people are doing that is harming other people? Right. This is a moral challenge, and it's up to us to do something about it.
Do you think that...
Well, that was just Georgetown University, who's South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg. He's at Georgetown along with many other of the presidential candidates who have been hosting a global climate change forum this week. And as you heard him say in that clip, he's saying that this is an issue that faith voters should really champion.
All right. Abigail Robertson, thank you so much for being with us today. Well, joining us now is our esteemed panel. Julia Manchester is a political reporter at The Hill covering the 2020 campaign, and Pulitzer-winning syndicated columnist Clarence Page with the Chicago Tribune. Thank you guys so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Well, we're going to get to those climate protests in just a moment, but let's start with the big story driving the day. President Trump said earlier today that it doesn't matter if he asked the Ukrainian president to investigate Joe Biden, and then he dismissed the whistleblower as a partisan hack. Some critics are already charging that this might be an impeachable offense. He said that he did nothing wrong and described that talk as pitch perfect. Where do you guys see this headed? Why don't we start with you, Clarence?
Well, he did do something wrong in terms of violating the usual norms in not reporting this conversation as he's supposed to in the way things have been done in the past. Now, we're dealing with a president who ran as a disruptor, one who breaks the norms. And once again, now the question comes up, because constitutionally he is supposed to report to Congress. He has an accountability there to Congress. Now, how far will Congress take this insofar as pushing it as an impeachable offense or something of that nature? How far will President Trump go in holding out remains to be seen. But one cannot say that this is not some violation of the of past rules.
Julia?
You know, I don't think it's surprising how this has really played out. We know that President Trump and Rudy Giuliani have talked repeatedly about Ukraine, and Rudy Giuliani in particular has talked about Hunter Biden's involvement in Ukraine and, you know, potentially investigating that. So this really comes as no surprise, but it's just kind of more evidence or kind of more showing that President Trump has been speaking with other foreign governments, and it does give about these potential investigations, and that does give, I think, Democrats in Congress a lot of ammunition to investigate him further and potentially move towards impeachment. Now, it has yet to be seen where Democrats will go on this issue. I think there's the Nancy Pelosi camp that says, let's not impeach him. Let's wait to vote him out of office and not risk that political factor. However, you're seeing a lot more progressives and a growing number of Democrats in Congress saying this is another reason to move towards impeachment. And it shows, according to them, that President Trump's interests are vested in other foreign governments and that he's essentially asking an ally to investigate a political opponent.
Could this perhaps, though, backfire, giving the impression that because Democrats weren't successful with the Mueller report, they were expecting much more, that they're looking for another smoking gun here?
Absolutely, and I think that's the calculus Nancy Pelosi is definitely running on, and that you're going to see a lot of Democrats push towards. However, I think there's a lot of frustration in the caucus with this sentiment that we should wait to vote President Trump out. I think a lot of Democrats feel at this point that President Trump has committed impeachable offenses due to his contacts with foreign governments. So you're going to see a lot of frustration bubble over. However, and that might go well with the Democratic primary base. However, you know, Democrats need to be cognizant of independent or maybe swing voters who could be sick of the investigations in Washington.
In other words, does Nancy Pelosi have the votes? She did want to go for impeachment. A lot of people don't think she does.
I want to go back to those mass protests. Climate change, of course, is a top issue among Democrats. With Republicans, not so much. But given this swelling that we're seeing worldwide, how much pressure is it going to take to move Republicans, and namely Mitch McConnell and President Trump?
I just want to say I got stuck in the crowd of these charming youngsters over at Union Station here in Washington, D.C. today. They're just everywhere. It's heartwarming to see them caring about this, and they care about it because this is their future. You know, they're going to be around when we're gone. But this current Congress is also the men and women of the present and the past. And as far as the Republicans are concerned, they're not excited about the climate change issue enough to really have some serious legislation right now.
Want to squeeze in one last question. We have about a half minute left. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio dropped out. Not unexpected. Who do you think is next?
You know, it's hard to say. You know, Michael Bennet is one person that I've been questioning why he's continuing to be in the race. Steve Bullock is one candidate who I thought, okay, he's a governor. He won in a Trump state as a Democrat. However, I think some of the other senators, Michael Bennet, namely, people are wondering, you know, okay, when are they going to drop out?
Clarence, your thoughts?
Yes, people are wondering that. I fully agree. I think it seems to be really boiling down to Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris. And maybe Pete Buttigieg possibly in there, but those are the big names.
You see the rest kind of fading.
Yes.
Who am I forgetting? I did mention Joe Biden. Okay.
All right. Clarence, Julia, thank you both so much for being with us, and have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, how Congress is responding to allegations of bias and censorship in big tech.
Introducing the CBN Bible from CBN.com. Now, an easier way to study the Bible and grow in your faith. Highlight your favorite verse. Read separate versions at a glance. Click and read a commentary. Or cross-reference your favorite verse using the Strong's Concordance. All the right tools to study the Bible, all in one place. The CBN Bible, available at cbn.com/Bible or the iTunes App Store.
It has the power to influence weight loss, boost your immune system, and improve brain function.
We've seen an explosion of data on the role of the gut microbiome in health.
The free Build a Better Gut booklet reveals the latest information about the gut microbiome you'll discover how your gut affects the rest of your health.
The gut microbiome has been linked to depression and cancer and heart disease.
Learn how to build a stronger, healthier gut.
The microbiome, if it's in good composition, are really protecting us all the time from more invasive things.
Get the Build a Better Gut booklet, free from the Christian Broadcasting Network. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com/buildabettergut.
You need to make sure that your microbes are working with you, not against you.
And if you order online, you'll get immediate access to the Build a Better Gut series, a digital copy of the booklet, and related bonus material. Build a better gut today. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com/buildabettergut for your free copy.
Here, we're committed to a heritage of rigorous scholarship dating back over 1,000 years.
And to a faith tradition dating back 1,000 more.
This is how we create a culture of inquiry where no topic is off limits.
And a culture of hope.
Anything's possible!
It's Christian leadership.
And it's changing the world for the better.
It's higher learning.
It's greater knowing.
It's what makes us whole.
It's what makes us Regent.
Welcome back. Tonight, Facebook is admitting it was wrong to censor a pro-life group. Live Action President Lila Rose declared in a tweet that in a meeting with Missouri Republican Josh Hawley, Mark Zuckerberg said Facebook was wrong to censor me and Live Action, that there was clear bias and that the fact-checkers were activists. CBN News asked Senator Hawley about bias and censorship within Facebook.
Facebook has a pattern now of censoring pro-life voices and pro-life organizations, and that's what they did with Live Action. They censored Live Action's pro-life content, and the worst part about it was the supposedly neutral board that makes these decisions for Facebook included 2 pro-abortion activists. So I called Facebook out on it. I said, this is outrageous, and you have a pattern now of doing this.
Well, Chris Lewis is the president of the Public Knowledge Group and the man we always turn to when we need a gut check on some of these issues with big tech potentially acting in bad faith. Chris, always good to see you.
Thanks, John.
Chris, how prevalent is this type of bias and censorship, and how significant is it that Facebook is acknowledging that it was wrong?
Well, you know, if Facebook feels that they were wrong in how they moderated content, they should own up to it. You know, the important thing here is that we have the power of who has the power to censor or moderate content in the right place. It shouldn't be coming from the government. That's why we have the First Amendment. We have platforms that are empowered to have clear, transparent rules about how they moderate content. We want to encourage that. And we also want to encourage consumer choice so that users can go to other platforms if they feel like one platform or another is not meeting their needs.
This is a hot button issue we often hear about from our viewers at CBN.
Yeah.
How closely have you at Public Knowledge been following this particular issue?
You know, we've been following the concerns about bias in platforms for a while, and you know, I would say that it seems that some of the accusations are sometimes overblown. However, you have one example here where Live Action felt like the decision that was made with their specific content was unfair. And that's why, you know, transparent rules, fair appeal rights, and due process are important with these platforms. We want to empower the platforms to make decisions so that we don't have to rely on the government to come in and make hard and fast rules.
What does Facebook need to do to be addressing situations like this? And do they owe more than just a public apology?
You know, I think, you know, owning up to when they think they've made an incorrect decision is important, and then going back and correcting the content that they moderated is what we're looking for. But we also want to see companies like Facebook to support rules and policies that will bring more competition to the marketplace, give consumers more choices. You know, most of the studies that we see around bias in content moderation really show that there is not an ideological conservative or liberal bias, but there's more of a bias towards things that will go more viral. So when you look at things that are reposted or retweeted on Facebook or Twitter, it's often news sources from mostly conservative sources that are posted the most. So it's hard to say that there's a bias against conservatives, but you really want to have a process that can check who's making the decision on what is allowed, what's not allowed, what's over the line, what's not over the line.
Is there anything more that leaders can do other than write strongly worded letters?
You know, I think it's fine if leaders you know, want to work the refs a little bit, and we're seeing that from Senator Hawley. But I think the most important thing we can do is stand up for you know, the the rights and the preservation of the First Amendment, that we don't want the government overstepping its bounds and saying what content is fair and what content is not fair, and to promote rules that allow for the marketplace to work out these things and let the platforms make these decisions and then have an appeal process.
All right, Chris Lewis, we always appreciate you joining us.
No, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Well, coming up, epic, deadly, record-breaking flooding in Texas yet again. That story next.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com. Want to be a part of a community that inspires your spiritual growth while winning prizes? The all-new MyCBN app. Connect with the community for prayer and encouragement. Track and set spiritual goals. Enjoy conversation starters with friends and family. And collect points to win prizes. The all-new MyCBN app. A great place to belong. Download the app at cbn.com/mobile. Grow. Connect. Have fun. The all-new MyCBN app.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs, from health to entertainment, you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place, from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Check your local listings or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
Come home to the sounds of Southern Gospel from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern gospel favorites like the Gaithers, the Crab Family, and bluegrass sounds like Mountain Faith. So make yourself at home with the all-new CBN Southern Gospel, now available at cbnradio.com.
Well, once again, the Houston area has been drenched in devastating floodwaters. Tropical Storm Imelda has been pouring several feet of rain into parts of the city. Our Jennifer Wishon reports.
It's being called a 1,000-year flood, but it's only been 2 years since the region cleaned up after Hurricane Harvey's historic flooding. Yesterday afternoon, Tina and Robert Horn headed to Walmart for groceries. 9 hours later, they were rescued from their flooded car.
I hit that water. Poof, that was it. How deep? Car's floating.
Car was floating.
Oh, yeah, car floating.
How deep?
Well, it was up here.
I'm like seeing sideways so the current wouldn't knock me frontward.
Flooding is being blamed for the deaths of 2 men, including one who drowned attempting to drive through 8 feet of water.
We always told folks, turn around, don't drown. In this case, it seems like he didn't heed that warning and continued to drive through it.
Remnants of Tropical Storm Imelda dumped more than 40 inches of water on Jefferson County in just 72 hours. And in Harris County, emergency officials making at least 1,700 high water rescues.
And everybody was like, get out the car, it's about to get higher, you can't do nothing about it.
In Beaumont, the Coast Guard plucked victims from water and flew them to safety. It's a devastating blow for families like these, some with as much as 5 feet of water in their homes, many wading through chest-high water to flee their neighborhoods.
It's been relentless, and we just can't escape. It's like we're on an island here.
As waters rose, this herd of cattle joined people in a rush to higher ground.
These people have been standing around for hours now, and it looks like it's going to be a while longer.
In the Houston region, some 5 million residents may not see high waters recede until well into the weekend, the beginning of another long road to recovery. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News.
When we come back, the ghost stories behind the nation's newest ship cemetery. Next.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life.
life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
And ministering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to CBNNewsChannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News.
Finally tonight, have you ever wondered where America's naval ships go once they're decommissioned? Well, they're sent to what are called marine sanctuaries, and the newest one, not far from here in the nation's capital, is home to around 100 World War I era shipwrecks. Our Gabe LaMonica took a trip down the river to the Ghost Fleet of Mallows Bay to bring their story to life.
The steel monster behind me is presiding over the skeletons of about 100 wooden ships. Locals around here call them the Ghost Fleet. The guards standing sentry over this ship cemetery are just the tip of the iceberg. Out of the muck, the soft tissue of the ships here start to come into focus. Their spines laid bare at low tide. A boneyard bristling with skeleton.
When I was a kid, that was kind of spooky.
Carl Sharp is an assistant park manager here who's been exploring the ghost ships on these waters for some 50 years.
And back then, you could kind of go in between them, and it was like you're looking up and going, oh, and of course there was ghost stories and all that.
During World War I, the War Department commissioned 1,000 wooden steamships for a rush order to build transports faster than German U-boats could sink them. After the war, those leftovers were dumped here.
They burned them down to where the water line was then at the time.
We took a ride with Sharp and park manager James Fedorko to trace the outlines of the fallen ships.
Only very few of them actually ever were used, and most of them just sat where they were built and then moved to the scrap pile.
From the SS Boone, named by Woodrow Wilson's wife in 1918 and scrapped 4 years later, to this new shipwreck, caught in the spine of a 100-year-old predecessor. Hundreds of ships have met their demise on this southern end of the Potomac River.
The history here goes back just where the water sits and how the land is.
Now, nature is taking over this living graveyard, where ghost ships are resurrected for new life.
It's just going back to nature where it came from.
The nation's newest marine sanctuary is also America's largest ship graveyard. Gabe LaMonica, CBN News, Mallows Bay, Maryland.
Gabe gets all the great assignments. Well, thanks so much for joining us tonight for Faith Nation. We hope you have a great weekend.